Welcome to Retire with Purpose, a show specifically designed to help you maximize your financial confidence in retirement. Casey Weade is the CEO and Chief Visionary of Howard Bailey Financial, a certified financial planner and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. He's your host on Retire with Purpose.
Hey, I'm Casey Weade, and we believe in retirement strategies that are driven by meaning and purpose. Join us this week and every week as we discuss planning for your best retirement, pinpointing your purpose, building a rock-solid financial plan, and unpacking trending topics that could impact your financial future. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weade. Joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshal Johnson, here with me.
Hey.
And this is our opportunity to discuss retirement with you. So if you're at retirement, in retirement, near retirement, or you're just seeking that coveted job optional status, you've come to the right spot. We're going to have a wide-ranging discussion talking about everything from how bond funds work, to the taxation of gold inside your portfolio, the reliability of Social Security benefits into the future, and we're also going to debunk some retirement myths, such as maxing out your 401k. And we're also going to talk about the too hard pile. Do you have some investments that are just too hard for you to comprehend? Which one should be in, out, or just thrown into that too hard pile when it comes to your retirement planning decisions? We'll get to that in a moment. But first off, we're going to debunk some retirement myths. We're going to be sharing an article with you that came from our Weekend Reading for Retirees email series. That's one email that hits your inbox every single Friday with 4 articles on trending topics in the retirement planning space. Everything from the latest in investment trends, income planning trends, tax planning trends, and even the non-financial aspects of retirement. You can sign up at retirewithpurpose.com. We're going to share one of those articles that came to us from Investors Business Daily, and it is titled 7 Retirement Myths Debunked.
Yeah, I love that. Love that title. There's a lot of those. There's a lot of advice out there, Casey. In the opening line of this article, he describes Googling retirement planning rules, and it produced 221 million results on Google.
I'm surprised it wasn't a trillion results. Maybe it broke the internet there. 221 million results on Google. Yeah, there's a lot of advice that's out there, and some of it's right, some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's just misconstrued. And I think this article does a good job of outlining what some of those myths are in a fair manner as well, being that a lot of the myths came out of blanket statements, and the financial world is nuanced. And if we had a great guest, Maria Konnikova, one of the best poker players in history, on the show a while back, and she shared with our audience that financial planning is nuanced. And if you're ever wondering if someone's bluffing, just like if you're sitting at a poker table, if they take a hard line and say, this is the way it is, you should never do this, you should always do that, then you might want to think about turning and going the other direction, because it's all nuanced. Every financial product, there's no good or bad financial product or financial strategy or retirement plan. It just depends on your own personal disposition and the facts surrounding your own financial position in order to determine what the best solution is for you. It is nuanced. And I think the first one does a great job of just discussing exactly how nuanced that is. Yeah. Myth number 1 in retirement planning is that you should max out your 401k.
Yeah, I hear this quite a bit, and I think it's something that has probably been passed down from generation to generation, trying to get folks just to save. And they say, well, how much should I save in my 401k? Well, max it out.
Yeah, and they actually give a hypothetical example that came actually from Ed Slott. The hypothetical example is old Viv here. So Viv Cook, she earns $100,000 a year, and her employer matches 100% on up to 6% of her pay. Ed Slott says she should contribute at least $6,000 to her 401k this year. That's 100% return with no market risk on that contribution. It's hard to pass up. He goes on to say, but Viv shouldn't automatically go beyond the $6,000 all the way up to the $19,500 upper limit this year. $26,000 for those that are 50 or older. There are potentially better uses for those excess dollars. Get the free match, get that 100% guaranteed return, but then look for other locations to allocate those dollars. You have to remember, when you allocate dollars to a tax-deductible 401k, you're getting a tax deduction today. That's great. However, you're creating a lot of pain for yourself in the future. You have just taken out a loan with a variable interest rate with no cap. What do I mean? You got a tax deduction this year at maybe 22%. Well, sometime in the future, that tax rate could be 40% or 90%, could be 5%. You've taken out a variable rate loan by getting that tax deduction. There's other uses that might give you a better return or better bang for your buck, such as paying down high interest rate debt, credit card debt, maybe even student loans for that matter. Funding a health savings account, so you get a tax deduction and it's growing tax-free for qualified expenses. Roth IRAs, if you are actually participating in a 401k, as Ed goes on to share here, it is kind of a widely recognized myth. I've ran into many clients that I just had one this past week that they're maxing out their 401k, and they said, well, what else do we do? I said, well, why don't we max out a Roth IRA? I said, yeah, but we make too much money. Yeah. I said, yeah, but there's such thing as a backdoor Roth. We can make a non-deductible IRA contribution, and then we can convert it to a Roth IRA, so you can still make Roth contributions even though you're participating in that company 401k plan. And hey, if you have a Roth option, which you probably do inside your 401k, go all the way up to the max limit if that makes sense for your unique situation. However, even there you go, yeah, but wouldn't the HSA be better? Yes, the HSA would be better for those excess contributions, and your high interest rate debt would probably be better as well. Well, it's nuanced.
It's nuanced, right? We talk about tax diversification, trying to diversify your savings buckets. The challenge of maxing out the 401k, if that's the only savings vehicle you have, fast forward to age 65, then you only have one place to withdraw those income strategies from. So it gives you less flexibility at the start of retirement. Don't be afraid to diversify those assets. Get that free match first. So we call that the free max. Get the free max and then diversify your tax buckets.
Myth number 2, you should defer taxes in your retirement accounts as long as possible.
It's a big one.
Ed Slott did a webinar for our clients earlier this year, and he talked a little bit about the plan that you're on. Do you want to be on your retirement plan, or do you want to be on the government's retirement plan? And along those lines, he talked about this little sweet spot,
little oasis.
Yeah, between ages of 59.5 and 72, where you're in control. This is the only time that you're in control with those tax-deferred retirement accounts. So if you're between 59.5 and 72, this is your opportunity to get off of the government plan and take control of your retirement savings, because you have a lot of options in this window to get back total control of your retirement accounts.
Right, because the longer you defer those assets, the greater that sum of money is going to become, and then the larger the required minimum distributions are going to be on the back end. So control what you can control today. The next myth is moving into collecting Social Security benefits when somebody retires, Casey.
Yeah, if you earn $10,000 over the roughly $19,000 limit in 2021, then $5,000 is going to be withheld from your monthly Social Security benefits. Okay, so you do have an earnings limit prior to your full retirement age, somewhere between 66 and 67, depending on your year of birth, and that's going to reduce your current Social Security benefit if you're going over those earning limits. So you could still work if you're not earning over those limits. You get to keep all of those Social Security benefits today, and the good news is that any benefits that you do get withheld, if you earn too much, they're not truly lost. At your full retirement age, your benefit's going to be increased to account for the dollars that were previously withheld. It's always good to make money.
Yeah, and I thought that was the biggest myth there. I think most people assume, well, I made too much money, I had to give back, or I lost some of my benefits. Those benefits actually do come back to you.
Well, what about expenses? Myth number 4, will your expenses go up in retirement?
Of course. Yeah, that's what everybody thinks, right? That's a big myth.
Yeah, well, look at any financial plan I've ever seen any financial advisor put together, and you're going to see increasing expenses for a retiree every single year for the rest of their lives. You're spending $100,000 today, you're 65, and when you're 85, you're going to be spending $200,000 a year. I've never seen it. We've been working with clients for 20 years.
Yeah, I've got some 25 years into retirement.
We've never seen any of those individuals spend twice as much today as they spent 20 years ago. They're spending less. And there's statistics that show us that or illustrate that. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that expenses go down on average as we age about $10,000 per year between our age groups of 55 to 64, 64 to 75, 75 and older. So your expenses go down. Inflation goes up. Those two typically, on average and historically, have balanced each other out for the average individual. Now, again, nuanced. So if you're living on the bare minimum today and you're not spending a lot, you don't have a lot of discretionary expenses, then your expenses probably will keep up pace with inflation. They probably won't go down when you're 80 or 85. Right. On the other side of that token, if you're spending all kind of dollars traveling, second homes, multiple cars, then yeah, you're 85, 95, probably going to eliminate some of those expenses.
Yeah, the next myth here says everyone retires at 65, but as the author kind of points out, if you retire at 65 just because you think you're supposed to, it may put you in a financial challenge if you file for Social Security earlier than full retirement age.
Yeah, you don't have to retire at 55, 65, 67. There is no set retirement age. You pick that for yourself. Myth number 6, you must enroll in Medicare at age 65. Well, if you're still actively employed beyond 65, covered by a group healthcare plan, you might be eligible for a special enrollment period. Right. So that's not necessarily true either. But myth number 7, my favorite of all.
Yeah, you cannot make a QCD prior to RMD age.
Oh man, there's a lot of acronyms you threw in there.
Right?
You're acronym city right now. IRAs, 401ks, QCDs, RMDs. What does it all mean, Basil? Well, when it comes to your IRAs at age 72, you're going to start to have to kick out required minimum distributions. Whether you want those dollars or not, now the IRS says, hey, you got to start taking those distributions. You got to pay taxes on those things. That can increase your Social Security taxes, get you into a higher tax bracket, cost you Medicare premium penalties. And one of the benefits, though, that the IRS laid out a few years ago is that you have the ability to take that RMD and send it directly to charity and make sure it never touches your tax return. Now, with the RMD age being pushed from 70 and a half to 72, some might come to assume that they cannot do a QCD or a qualified charitable distribution from their IRA until they get to RMD age, but that's not the way the IRS has laid out that language. You can do it from age 70 and a half to 72 and beyond. It's not RMD related, it's actually age related at the end of the day. So if you feel like maybe you've been stuck in a myth, maybe you're maxing out your 401k and you're wondering if there's something better that you can do with those dollars, then give us a call right now. We'll share with you exactly what your other options are. We'll break through the myths and get you on path for a more secure, a more independent retirement with a complimentary financial review for the next 10 callers. You'll meet with an independent advisor on our team, either in person or through a video meeting from the comfort of your home, and we'll help you determine how prepared you are to handle retirement pitfalls like inflation, healthcare emergencies, stock market crashes, rising taxes. In short, we'll take the guesswork out of financial planning for you. So for the next 10 callers that call 866-482-9559, we're offering a comprehensive financial review at no obligation. That's 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. We'll be right back after this short break.
You're listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. It's your host, Casey Weade. Joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson, here with me. Oh. And this is our opportunity to answer your question of the day. So let's test that knowledge of yours. The question of the day is this: what is the percentage of individuals that are 65 or older that will need 3 years or more of long-term care services? Is that 10%, 15, 25%, 50%? Marshall?
According to a recent study, about a quarter of those 65 or older will need 3 years or more of medium or high-intensity care.
Yeah, about 25% of individuals are going to need more than 3 years of care. That means they're going to have more than 3 years worth of some very hefty expenses. Now, if we look at the average statistics, we often hear it quoted that 7 in 10 individuals 65 or older will have a chance of developing a severe need for long-term care services. That can be a little deceptive because there's a wide range of different needs. And so this study that we included in a previous Weekend Reading article talked through those different levels of needs, low needs, moderate needs, high level, severe needs. And while, yes, you have a very high likelihood of needing long-term care services at some point throughout retirement, that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be able to leverage your long-term care policy because you may not have needs that rise to that level or persist for that extended of a period of time. This is why it's so important to really understand where you lie on the spectrum of risk when it comes to long-term care services and also what you can afford to insulate yourself from.
Yeah, this was a great study done by Boston College and the Center for Retirement Research. I think, you and I are both very interested in kind of this type of research, and because these questions come up in most of our meetings, right? When families are planning for not only retirement, but the end of care healthcare dealings, they want to know what's the likelihood, how am I going to need care, what kind of care am I going to need, and how much can I afford to put there?
Yeah, and I think what's going to be more interesting as this study continues, we're going to be including the follow-up article in our next Weekend Reading article. When that study is released, it's going to talk more about how many individuals are actually leveraging their long-term care policies and to what degree. So it's going to walk us through your current demographic situation and what the right type of long-term care policy is for your unique situation. But let me also give this caveat: you either need it or you don't. We can talk about 7 and 10. We can talk about 25% or 50% chances. You never want to be left destitute. So just like you never want to be left on the street and lose your home, this is why you buy fire insurance, which you'll most likely never need. You still want to make sure that you're insulated against that risk. And I think whether this risk is 10% or 70%, it's something that you need to consider as part of your comprehensive retirement plan. And that's why we exist, in order to help you insulate yourself against those risks and get an independent assessment of what those needs are, and as well an assessment of all the different types of tools that could be leveraged to help solve that risk for you. So if you'd like to be walked through that, give us a call right now at 866-482-9559. 866-482-9559. We'll walk you through your current risk and all the potential solutions that could be used to solve for it.
Yeah, that was a wonderful article. And now this is my favorite segment where we're going to turn the mic over to our listeners. Cues from you.
Well, and if you have questions, we have answers at retirewithpurpose.com. So go to retirewithpurpose.com, in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You just drop your question there. That'll come directly to us, and we will get you an answer to your question. We'll also ask if you mind if we feature that question here on the show, which is what we did with Linda. Linda says, can you explain how bond funds work?
Bond funds, Linda.
I love how straightforward the question is.
She's coming in hot here today. Well, yeah, if you think about it, a mutual fund is a pooled investment where a bunch of investors pool their money together, and then there's a team that's managing that pool and buying securities. Well, in this case, with bonds, they're purchasing fixed securities, different durations. You can get bond funds that invest in government bonds or treasuries. There's municipal bonds. There's corporate bonds. There's foreign government, corporate bonds. There's all kinds of different levels of bonds. And geez, Casey,
there's a lot of corporate bonds.
Yeah, if you think there's not a lot of high quality ones though anymore. But if you think stocks are confusing, bonds are even more confusing.
Yeah, there's a lot of different bonds out there that you could potentially hold inside of a bond fund. We got that clear, Marshal. But what's the difference between an individual bond and a bond fund? I think the biggest thing we need to understand is that when you're owning a bond fund, you're owning the fund itself. You're not owning any individual bonds. So that means that when that fund increases or decreases in value, which is directly related to the value of those underlying bonds, that's going to increase or decrease the value of your portfolio. Now, if you own an individual bond, you don't care what that value of that bond is as the interest rates in the economic environment rise and fall. Okay, does it drop? Does it go higher? It doesn't matter, because at the end of that term, you get back your original investment if you hold it to maturity. If it's inside of a bond fund, those bonds are rarely held to maturity, largely because there's redemptions and withdrawals. You're inside that bond fund with your neighbor and the guy across the street and the guy that's hanging out in New York City. There are thousands, if not millions, of different individuals investing in that bond fund alongside you. And when they make a transaction, it impacts you from a transaction cost perspective, from a tax perspective, and the inability to avoid that interest rate risk. So today, if you are going to own bond funds, they need to be very short-term bonds so that you don't open yourself up to the risk of rising interest rates in the future. Or if you have the assets, then you should be evaluating owning individual bonds or other alternatives.
Yeah, owning them individually, not inside of the bond fund, but these are very tax inefficient vehicles for non-qualified accounts. Next up, we've got Richard. Richard says, Casey, how is gold valued in tax when we withdraw from an IRA?
Yeah. Well, Richard, I assume we're talking about physical gold. And up until several years ago, you couldn't own physical gold inside of an IRA. Now you have the ability to own it inside of an IRA. The downside of this is that you can't actually hold it at home. It has to be held at a custodian or a brokerage house. And there's only several of those in the country that actually allow you to own physical gold inside of an IRA through their custody. And they're actually holding those assets, say, on site typically. And so there you're running into a lot of different issues that we don't necessarily need to get into here on the air. One of those, let's just say, is, hey, I want my gold back. Send me a distribution of my gold. Well, they might buy it back from you. In all likelihood, they're going to be selling that gold to a third party. So they're going to be selling that to a third party. That third party is going to want a discount on the current value of gold. So you're not actually ever getting back what the current value of that gold is. This is why I really emphasize, if you're going to hold individual gold, hold it for jewelry's sake. Buy something for your wife or something that you can enjoy for yourself, because you're not buying an investment. You're buying a commodity. You're buying something that's purely speculative. Unless you know what's going to happen in the global markets and all of the ins and outs of the highly complex economy we live in today, and you've got a crystal ball alongside it, then you don't know what the price of gold is actually going to do in the future. It's purely a speculative investment. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be part of your portfolio. You just have to recognize that you're taking on significant risks if you hold it physically, and you're also taking on just as much, if not even more risk, if you're holding it through a brokerage or a separate custodian. And then if you ask for a withdrawal, they're going to sell the gold, they're going to send you a distribution amount. And that distribution amount is what you're taxed on, not the actual price of the gold at the time, because you're going to get that back at a discounted rate.
Yeah, so anything coming out of an IRA, whether it's gold or cash, is going to be taxed as ordinary income based upon where you're at in that year. It's worth mentioning, though, Casey, that the IRS actually considers gold to be a collectible. So if it's held long-term, it's taxed at collectible rates, which are higher than long-term capital gains.
Yeah, if you're going to hold it outside of an IRA. Yeah. Our last question comes from Bryce saying, I'm concerned about the reliability of Social Security. You hear many differing views on how it might change in the future. What's your opinion?
Bryce, my opinion, and Casey may differ, but I think Social Security is going to be there. It may look a little bit different down the road, maybe by the time I get there. Social Security full retirement ages are going to be pushed out. Maybe it's taxed a little bit differently. Maybe there's some haircuts that folks need to take. Something's going to change, I can tell you that, but I do feel like Social Security is still going to be around. It just may look a little bit different.
Yeah, and as we know it today, the fund is slated to run out, but there's still going to be tax revenue that's funneling into that fund to pay for those Social Security benefits, which allows current beneficiaries to collect about 75% of the current benefit amount. I truly don't believe that they'll let it get to that point. We've been here in the past, and at the 11th hour, the Congress has elected to make changes in order to ensure that those Social Security beneficiaries remain whole. So recognizing recognize we've actually been here before. We've felt the unreliability of Social Security in the past, and that's where we find ourselves again. And I believe that something will be done to make those Social Security beneficiaries whole. Is that going to be good for everyone? Of course not. There's always trade-offs. There's going to be people that win. There's going to be individuals that lose, and we'll just have to wait to see when it comes around that. Now, I believe that we should all be stress testing our plans based on the future of Social Security. So why don't we do this? Why don't you come in and visit with us? We will share with you what your big picture looks like if you have a 25% haircut in your future Social Security benefits. We'll share with you what happens if they stay the same. We'll share with you what happens if you don't get cost of living adjustments for the rest of your life on Social Security. We need to stress test your plan, not just for Social Security, but you should be stress testing your plan on the risk of rising taxes. You should be stress testing it on the future of a slower growth stock market. Continued low interest rates. You need to be stress testing your plan in a number of different ways to make sure that you have confidence that you're never going to run out of money in retirement. And we're going to do that right now via a complimentary financial review for the next 10 callers, where you can meet with an independent advisor on our team. We'll walk you through all of these risks and provide you with physical stress tests of all these different scenarios and so much more. In short, we'll take the guesswork out of financial planning for you. It can take just 30 minutes. So for the next 10 callers that call 866-482-9559 right now, we're offering a comprehensive financial review with no obligation. 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. We'll be right back after this short break with a very special guest. We have certified professional retirement coach, Jillian Leithman.
You're listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weade. Joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson, here with me. And we have another very special guest for you today. We have Dr. Jillian Leithman. She also likes to be known as Dr. Jill. We had the opportunity to interview Dr. Jill on episode number 243 of the Retire with Purpose podcast, which you can check out at retirewithpurpose.com. She is a retirement coach, corporate trainer, and researcher. We have had a handful of retirement coaches join us on the Retire with Purpose podcast. Yeah. However, Dr. Jill is the first one that I would say is a true academic. She definitely approaches aging and retirement from an academic perspective, and also helps coach people through their own life transitions. She's also an adjunct professor at the John Molson School of Business and co-creator of the Certified Professional Retirement Coach designation. She utilizes her expertise in research to help you transition from work to retirement. She partners with financial advisors as well to complement our expertise and aims to broaden the very concept of retirement planning to include the non-financial aspects of your retirement life. She even developed a retirement guide titled Rewire to Retire, 5 crucial questions you must ask yourself before you retire that have nothing to do with money, which we're going to be giving away free here later on. So stay tuned to find out how to get a free copy of your own. First, we're going to share a segment of our conversation where she shared what she hopes becomes ridiculous about today's retirement mentality 25 years into the future.
So I think it's insane. It's not my job to tell somebody when to retire. That is a really personal decision that needs to, you need to take into account a variety of different variables when you're thinking about when you should exit. But to me, it's crazy. To me, I've spoken to people who are at the height of their careers, at the age of 65. And, my research was really asking people and speaking to people, discussing, well, tell me, why is it that you want to retire? And a lot of people have this 65 seems to be in North America, that seems to be like wedged in our brains. Well, I'm 65, I need to retire. And then you probe them and you ask them, okay, so do you feel as though your productivity has changed? No. Has anybody told you that your performance has fallen? No. Do you feel that your energy has, you don't have as much energy as you used to? No. So why do you want to retire? And there seems to be this ingrained idea that we need to leave at the age of 65. Unfortunately, I think that, that number, which, that's a whole different discussion as to how it was chosen and why it was chosen. But it's not reflective of life in the 21st century. So my hope is that people look back and say, what, we retired at 65? That's insane.
Well, hey, job optional. See, that's what our mission is. We want to shift your idea from retirement to I'm going to retire at 65 to I'm going to become job optional at age 65.
Right.
Next up, Jillian shares why she believes it's important to find balance, purpose, and meaning in our working years and how that can help lend to a smooth transition into retirement.
And so I think we get it wrong. I think the majority of us get this really, really wrong. In other words, it's lopsided. Like we don't have any balance. We work, hoping that, we will, be rewarded, with rest and relaxation once we exit. That makes no sense. Like it makes no sense that you kill yourself, in your career for 30, 35 years, and then you exit and think you're going to, spend the time relaxing. We need much more of a balance. And that's a really big statement, because what does balance look like? And it's really different for all of us. But, you don't want to fill one part of your life for 30 years with work and then think about leisure for the next 30, because there's these great things that we get from both. And they work well together in tandem, right? So when we're relaxing and engaging in hobbies, well, you're going to be a lot more rejuvenated when you go back to work. You're going to be a lot more creative if you're not so stressed. So we need to design our lives in a way where we have both, that relaxation, that time to reflect, that relaxation, that rejuvenation, time with friends, time with family, as well as time in the pursuit, I would say, of meaningful endeavors. So it doesn't necessarily have to be paid work, but pursuing things that are meaningful to us, spending our lives doing things that are purposeful.
Next up, Dr. Jill shares with us from Retire with Purpose podcast, episode 243, why purpose and meaning stems from being a part of something larger than yourself and how serving others can produce what she calls a helper's high.
Where are you going to find that sense of meaning and purpose? Now, meaning and purpose, most of us find it by being by being part of something that is larger than ourselves. So being part of a cause that is larger than you. Most of us find it by helping other people. Now, you might not like people. That's okay. Maybe you're not a people person. That's fine. But do you? Maybe you care about the climate, right? Maybe you care about animals. So you need to find something that is larger than you that you can be part of. And the helper's high, for the longest time, we believe that altruism, right? That assisting somebody else, right? That if I assisted you, Casey, then you benefited from my assistance. So we believed it was a unidirectional relationship. It was Casey that benefited from Jill's help. Well, today we know that that's not the case, actually, at all. In fact, it's Jill that benefits more than Casey. Now, my hope is that Casey benefits too. But the fact that I'm helping somebody else and I'm assisting somebody else and that, I'm getting out of the house or whatever it may be, but I'm assisting you, the brain actually, we get a high from it. We get a high from helping others. I get a high from seeing that my assistance actually helped you in some way, right? That your advice to clients, your financial advice helped clients to build their financial portfolios and live out their financial dreams. Or, it's not just financial dreams, but the ability to open up your own business, right? The ability to go back to school, having the money to do that. So that's a privilege to be able to assist somebody, and really help somebody live their best life, right? That is a high for us. We actually get a high that is tantamount to winning the lottery. When you find we get this high from assisting other people. So meaning and purpose, when you get down to it, meaning and purpose is really about living a life that in service of other people.
That's perfectly in line with our mission statement here at Howard Bailey, which is to elevate the meaning and purpose in the lives of others, allowing them to let go of what's next and focus on where they can make the biggest impact today. And we believe the biggest impact to be made today is in the lives of others vicariously through yourself. We're going to bring this full circle with Dr. Jillian, and Dr. Jill here shares with us why she believes financial advisors can bring more value to their clients by focusing on the non-financial aspects of retirement.
If you're a smart advisor, then you recognize, I shouldn't say it's not only if you're smart, it's if you care. If you understand that you hold probably one of the most, intimate, meaningful things that is going to influence my life in retirement, right? You have access to my finances. I'm entrusting you. I shouldn't say access. I should say I'm entrusting you with my money. Wow. I don't know how more intimate we get, there are a few other things, but that's pretty intimate, right? That's pretty intimate. I'm entrusting you with my future, so to speak. I find most advisors don't understand the need to develop a relationship with their clients, to really understand. It's not just about their money. Like, it shouldn't be just about how much money do you want when you retire? What's that magic number? It should be, the question really should be that you should be asking your clients is why? What are you going to do with that money? Right? Do you want to buy a boat? Do you want to buy another house? Do you want to travel around the world? Do you want to open up a business? Do you want to go back to school? Do you want to fund your children's or your grandchildren's education? What do you want to do with that money? And that question really helps to develop a relationship, because if you're smart and if you maintain a connection throughout the year, not just when you send your client their, portfolio, but when you actually, call them and say, hey, my advisor did this brilliantly, knew that, one of my goals was to buy a home. And so we had these metrics that, I needed to hit. And it was like, hey, Jill, we're halfway there. And he literally would write this on my, on the statements that he would send me, quarterly. Wow, I'm so motivating, right? So motivating. We're halfway there. And so it wasn't just about like that I wanted to achieve something for the sake of achieving a certain number. It was, what do you want to do with that money? And I think when you start asking those questions, you have a better understanding of your client.
We have a special offer for you today. We partnered up with Dr. Jillian Leithman to offer free copies of her digital guide, Rewire to Retire, 5 crucial questions you must ask yourself before you retire that have nothing to do with money. Free to you right here, right now. This guide is all about focusing on the non-financial aspects of retirement and reflecting on how to make your second act fulfilling, purposeful, and filled with activities that bring you joy. To claim your complimentary copy of Rewire to Retire, call or text the word 5, F-I-V-E, to 866-482-9559. Again, you can call or text the word 5, F-I-V-E, to 866-482-9559. Stick around, because up next, we're going to talk about a too hard pile. Do you have a too hard pile? What's a too hard pile? Maybe you need a too hard pile. We'll be back after this short break.
First-time callers are eligible to receive 1 in-stock book per request. Limit 1 book per week per household, up to 3 books per calendar year. See full terms at howardbailey.com/terms. You're listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weade. Joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson, here with me.
Hey.
And we have another weekend reading article we want to share with you. What is weekend reading? It is a collection of 4 articles that have been summarized along with takeaways from myself on trending topics in the retirement planning space that hit your inbox every single Friday. All you have to do is go to retirewithpurpose.com to sign up. We'd like to pull out one of those articles and highlight one of those articles here on the show with you. We also did a full-length podcast episode on this very article, which again, you can check out at retirewithpurpose.com. Just click on the podcast tab. You can get a link to the article along with a script. And this article comes to us from Morningstar, and it is titled, "My Too Hard Pile is Pretty Big," and it is written by one of our favorites, Christine Benz.
Christine, she comes in hot. Coming out of the top, she quotes Mr. Warren Buffett, and he says, "Charlie says we have 3 buckets, the in, the out, and the too hard. You don't have to do everything well. At the Olympics, if you run 100 meters well, you don't have to do the shot put."
I love this. We had several different articles that we were really torn between when it came to sharing an article with you here on the show, because there's a lot of good stuff out there. But this one really brought a unique concept to the table that I can apply to my own financial life, that of our clients, and I think you'll find the same thing for yourself. So do you have an in box? Do you have an out box? Do you have a too hard box? I think we all need this. We need to understand our limits, and we need to understand our strengths. Christine Benz shares that commodities tracking investments belong in her too hard pile. So gold ETFs, oil ETFs,
right.
In different miners or drillers, etc. She shares that it's impossible to know what the intrinsic value of commodities should be unless you have a crystal ball that peers into the global demand for oil, lumber, and other agricultural products. No such orb exists in the world that we have today. So that reduces commodities to what? It reduces it to a speculative instrument, not an investment. If your goal is to offset the slow but steady corrosive effect of inflation, which we're all concerned about today, why would you buy an investment where you could lose half or more of your investment right out of the box? And we've seen this time and time again in the commodities market. So for yourself, you're contemplating, well, should I add GLD to my portfolio? Should I add a USO to my portfolio? Should I add a commodities position to the mix? Do you know your limitations? You have to recognize your limitations. And I think what's really interesting and really insightful from Christine is, she's really learned that she has more limitations than she actually thought she did.
Yeah.
As she continues to learn.
Yeah, know thyself, right? And I love how she said, this is somebody that's in it, right? She's in the industry. She's thick at Morningstar. She's got some of the best analysts surrounding her. But she says, I realize the more knowledge I have about myself as an investor, what I'm trying to accomplish, it's gotten easier to pass on investments because they're outside of my own circle of competence. And I think that is an amazing honest point of view to give to all of us, right?
Isn't it great that you have some that are recognized as the most successful investors in the world, Charlie Munger and the Oracle of Omaha, and Warren Buffett, saying, hey, there's some stuff out there in this market that's just too hard for us. And it's a pretty big box that they have over there.
And not only just too hard, but she goes on to say, or require more time or patience than I'm able to put up with. And I think for me, Casey, when I think about the things that are in my too hard pile, changing the oil, I know that's not a hard thing to do, but it's just outside of my sphere of competence.
Yeah, there's a lot of mechanical things that are well outside my sphere of competence. Or, it's not even just competence, it's just having the time. Is it worth my time to put into efforts such as those? In Olympic terms, I've identified where I can be competitive and where I'm likely to be eliminated before the trials even begin.
I like that.
And boy, if you get me under the hood of a car, I'm probably going to be eliminated before the trial even begins.
Yeah.
It's also worth giving weight to some things we talk about a lot on the show: peace of mind, simplicity. And as we've mentioned, time management considerations. You have to determine if it's worth it. She gives an outline of, what she considers, some of the areas that are in her too hard box, or the things that, maybe they're good ideas, but she just doesn't have the time or the aptitude to pursue these things. And one of those is individual stocks. Now, she has access to one of the leading, if not the leading research arm into individual stocks and managed funds in the world. She is heavily embedded at Morningstar and says herself, you know what, I can make a strong case that maybe I should not be owning too many individual stocks.
Right. So she knows her limitations. She says, I've got some of the smartest people I know working in the Morningstar equity research team. I literally have their up-to-the-minute recommendations at my fingertips, and she still knows herself well enough to say, but it's not my thing.
And she's constantly interviewing and meeting with some of the best pros on Wall Street, right? And she recognizes how hard it is for even professional active managers to consistently outperform inexpensive index tracking funds by picking individual stocks. And she recognizes her own limitation there, saying she doesn't think she has any sort of edge over the professionals. And more importantly, she knows that she doesn't have the time to oversee a portfolio of stocks that's large enough to make a difference in how her overall portfolio behaves. Now, this is something that I've recognized myself. My outbox, or I shouldn't say my outbox, my too hard pile includes individual stocks. And as well as what she goes into next, actively managed funds or actively managed portfolios, I've realized that, I enjoy doing those things. And I think I'm fairly good at it.
Maybe even competent at those things.
Yeah,
right?
I think I'm good at it. But, one, it doesn't give me peace of mind because I don't have the time, right? I don't have the time that it takes to put into evaluating each one of those individual holdings. And we have access to some of the top portfolio managers, chartered financial analysts in the world that do this day in and day out. Why wouldn't I use someone that lives and breathes individual stock management and active portfolio management, knowing that it's being done professionally? Now, this is definitely still in the pile of things that I know need to be done. I need to own individual stocks. I need to own ETFs and manage portfolios. However, I know that I'm not going to do this myself. So I seek the best in the world. And I've said this for years. My dad said this for years when, he was a financial advisor for over 35 years. And what did he say? He would say, why would you want to have the person down the street in Roanoke or Columbia City or Fort Wayne managing your stock portfolio when you could go get someone that's one of the best in the world that has the education, background, experience, and lives and breathes this stuff every day managing your portfolio? We're not living in the 80s anymore where you have to work with a broker down the street. You can work with a financial planner down the street, cultivate the relationship, and have them bring to the table the best-in-class portfolio managers from Chicago and New York and abroad.
I think that's a great point. She goes on to say, given the finite amount of time spending you have in a day, she believes that she can earn a better return in areas like tax management rather than managing individual stocks. And I think that's a big thing that you and I have always talked about as well, Casey.
Yeah, and she also is avoiding leveraged investing, other forms of indebtedness, and that for me, I'm not fully in agreement here. I think there's some things that are in my inbox. I think debt management is in my inbox. Insurance management is in my inbox. I'm going to evaluate my whole life insurance strategy. But hey, I'm a chartered life underwriter, right? I have experience and formal education in doing those things, and I truly enjoy it and love making time for it. Whereas I'm not going to actively manage my stock and investment portfolio like I once did.
And to make that point, knowing herself and knowing the type of portfolio she wants something that's very simple. And that's where the leverage piece comes in. And she says, you know what, that's not my box. I'm not going to play in that area. I may be taking a certain amount of risk, but I'm not going to go so far to start to leverage things. She sleeps well at night knowing that she doesn't have any personal debt. Why would she start to take on debt in her investments as well?
And she also says, and I think this is really surprising, I didn't see this one coming. She says, in her box of too hard, the stuff that she's probably just not going to do is frequent rebalancing. I was really surprised by that. Sure. I mean, Morningstar is really big on the importance of rebalancing on a regular basis. Now, I'm guessing that she does still rebalance. She's probably doing it once a year or twice a year rather than doing it quarterly or more often than that, because there's a lot of benefits to rebalancing. You use rebalancing to help reduce risk in your portfolio, and also lean into undervalued positions that you find in your portfolio or in the market. That's why it is worthwhile. Now, for her, though, she has, again, a high level of self-awareness. She recognizes that if she's going to frequently rebalance her portfolio, it just doesn't seem worth the time it might take. But more importantly, looking at her portfolio very frequently is going to make her uncomfortable with her equity exposure. And she's going to start thinking about the risk, because the statistics show if you open up your brokerage account every single day, it's going to be in the red more than it's in the green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what was Vanguard's study too? Some of their best performing accounts one year were the accounts of people had either forgotten about or the people had died. So rebalancing may not be the best strategy for everybody, but understanding herself and understanding her limitations. But also she does point out that she's in the accumulation phase of life. Yeah. So she's not nearing retirement or at retirement's doorstep where those things may be more important.
What are the exercises that our team here uses internally for locating what we're the best at, the tasks that we should be performing in the office for our clients, is to go through this matrix that is, hey, what are my incompetent activities? What are my competent activities? What are my excellent activities? And what are my unique ability activities? I think you could apply that same thing to your financial life. Evaluate your financial life and all the different areas of it. Maybe it's budget management. Maybe it's debt management. Maybe it's mutual fund investing, ETF investing, stock investing, life insurance, annuities, pensions, Social Security decisions, Medicare decisions. Evaluate all those different areas and place those in those different boxes of incompetent, competent, excellent, unique ability. If you find that you have some incompetent activities that are still required, you say, well, I'm really bad and I have no idea how to do long-term care. I hate tax management, but I know it's necessary. Then seek help and give us a call to help walk you through those incompetent activities, because those are our unique abilities, and we'll be able to leverage those things to make sure you have the best retirement that you deserve. And we're going to give you that opportunity right now. So I want you to do that exercise and then give us a call at 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559 to help us get you on the path to a more secure and independent retirement. We'll be right back next week.
You've been listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson. Investment advisory services offered through Howard Bailey Securities, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Working with Howard Bailey Securities, LLC cannot guarantee investment success or that specific financial goals will be achieved. Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards, Inc. owns the certification marked CFP and Certified Financial Planner in the U.S., which it awards to individuals who successfully complete CFP Board's initial and ongoing certification requirements. Howard Bailey Financial is a registered trademark of Howard Bailey Financial. All rights reserved. Information is not intended to provide specific legal or tax advice. Howard Bailey Financial nor its advisors are qualified to give tax or legal advice. You are encouraged to consult with your tax or legal professional for guidance on your individual situation. This radio show is a paid placement.